Hello, my name is Ellie Fox, and today I'd like to talk about how parents of transgender youth reconstruct cultural models of kinship, care, and community. Rather than seeing parents as simply accepting or rejecting their child, I look at how families actively reinterpret what parenthood means. And through that process, they reshape not only their relationships at home, but also the broader social world around them. This project is guided by three questions. First, how do parents reconstruct cultural models of kinship when a child comes out as transgender? Families often hold deeply rooted assumptions about gender, identity, and obligation, so I wanted to understand how those models get reworked. Second, in what ways do families renegotiate roles and responsibilities during this process? Parental practices often change dramatically as families figure out what affirming care looks like in everyday life. And third, how do these reconstructed models shape parents' involvement in community support and advocacy? Many families move from private adaptation to very public forms of solidarity, and I wanted to understand what motivates that shift. To answer these questions, I use cultural models theory, which argues that people navigate the world through shared, taken for granted schemas. These models help us interpret what family is, what obligations we owe one another, and what good parenting should look like. But cultural models aren't static. People adapt them when they collide with lived experience. So when a child comes out as transgender, the parent isn't just learning new information. They're reinterpreting the cultural model that organizes their understanding of kinship. This matters because the process of reconstructing these models shapes how supportive the home environment becomes. Parents who shift from norm enforcing models to affirmation centered ones create conditions that are protective and deeply transformative. We know from decades of research that family support is one of the strongest predictors of positive mental health outcomes for trans youth. Supportive parenting is linked to lower levels of depression, anxiety, self harm, and suicidality. Even simple acts of social affirmation, like using a child's chosen name and pronouns, have measurable effects on well being. These findings tell us that family response is not a minor variable, it's a central determinant of safety and mental health. But there's a gap. We know affirming homes help, but we understand far less about how parents actually get there. What does the adaptation process look like? How do families make sense of their child's identity within their existing cultural frameworks? This project explores that process. One major finding is that parents actively reconstruct their kinship models. Many start with a biologically anchored understanding of gender and parenthood. As their child asserts a different identity, parents often move towards a model of kinship grounded in authenticity rather than biology. Care becomes defined not by enforcing norms, but by supporting who the child actually is. This leads to a renegotiation of roles and obligations. Parents shift from an authority based role to a more collaborative, learning oriented one. They often describe becoming students of their own child, learning how to parent in a way they had never been taught. A third component is ambiguous loss. Parents sometimes grieve the imagined child they thought they knew, while simultaneously embracing the real child in front of them. This grief doesn't reflect rejection. It reflects the emotional work of reorganizing family narratives and expectations. As parents reconstruct kinship, they also transform their practices of care. One major shift is from protection to attunement. Instead of trying to shield their child by enforcing gender norms, parents begin protecting them by affirming their identity. Care becomes a practice of listening, validating, and adapting. Parents also develop emotional competence. They learn new skills, using correct names and pronouns, supporting gender expression, and managing their own fears so they don't transfer them to their child. These shifts reduce youth distress and strengthen family connection. Finally, affirming care plays a critical role in reducing minority stress. A supportive home environment buffers youth from the stigma and discrimination they face elsewhere. Parents often become the primary source of resilience in their child's life. As parents gain experience, many move beyond their immediate household and construct new support networks. Some families experience rejection from extended relatives or religious communities. In response, they seek out other parents who understand their experience. These peer networks reduce isolation and create spaces where parents can rewrite their narrative with validation instead of shame. These groups also function as communities of practice. Parents share information about schools, healthcare, legal rights, and safe environments. They become resources for one another, building collective knowledge that helps their children thrive. For many parents, this eventually leads to advocacy. They challenge harmful school policies, speak out in public forums, and work to shape safer futures not only for their own child, but for all trans youth. Advocacy becomes an extension of kinship, as a way of protecting a broader community of children. To conclude, this project shows that families undergo profound transformations when raising a transgender child. First, they actively reconstruct cultural models of kinship. Parents reinterpret what it means to love, guide, and relate to their child. Second, care becomes a transformative process. Families renegotiate roles and expectations and learn new forms of emotional labor that directly improve youth well being. And third, support extends outward. Parents build new networks, create community, and often become advocates who reshape the social landscape around them. Affirming a child's identity doesn't just change one life, it reshapes what family can mean in contemporary society. Thank you so much for listening. These are the references that have supported this project.